Hi there and welcome to another episode of Teaching with Text. My name is Richard, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about Simon Schama's book Rough Crossings, which focuses in on the Atlantic slave trade, the famous triangular trade. It's a really widely taught topic across many history curricula all over the world. In the UK, for example, Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, various specifications in some of the exam boards, into the International Baccalaureate programme as well, within the DP exams. So it's widely taught as well, and rightly so in a sense. And recently we've had a slew of books around this topic. And this one I kind of want to focus in on because it actually is, in some sense, I suppose, ahead of the curve in a way, because this came out in 2005. And Schama as well is, in my humble opinion, a fantastic historian, and also in terms of writing history as well. So part of these episodes is sort of looking at how you can incorporate and why you should incorporate elements of historians' works into your own schemes of work and particular lessons, in a sense. For today, I'm going to focus in on one part of the book, which is page 157 to 160, which focuses in on the very famous case of the Zong slave ship, and there are multiple reasons I think you can use this section in the book in your teaching, because I'll start initially with Schama's writing style is very engaging. He sort of treads that line between historian and also storyteller, and he does it so well. Very vivid descriptions of the conditions when he's talking about the Zong slave ship. Uses things like the fetid rankness of the conditions as he describes the conditions that slaves encountered on the Zong slave ship itself. And considering he does this within only about 4 pages within the book, he's often very concise and very economical with words, but very cogent and very potent with the words that he chooses, and the sort of the style that he writes in, I think, is very engaging and very accessible for younger readers as well. It's vivid. It really brings that alive. And in a sense, I think, not necessarily going down the route of historical empathy per se, but in a way of really encapsulating that moment on board that ship. And within that section here, he does that in a way of focusing on the ship. So looking at the issues, how do we get here, looking at the broader kind of network and the whole kind of infrastructure of the slave trade at that time is encapsulated in that one part. I think it'd be really useful for students, because often students kind of find it difficult to conceptualize, in a sense, the sheer scale of the slave trade in a way, what maintained it, why it was maintained, why were people willing to enslave and countenance this deplorable treatment of other human beings. And again, in that section he uses the term live cargo, that was common currency at the time. So again, the way that Schama lifts primary evidence from the time and inserts that into his narrative, I think is really effective. And another reason why to use the Zong is, again, I think that will enable students to conceptualize some of the driving forces behind the continuation of the slave trade in terms of the money involved and the profits involved within the slave trade, and how people could benefit economically from it, massively so. And again, that's the focus there he uses in the sense of the rationale for Collingwood, the captain, seeing the insurance policy, and then having the decision here to essentially murder by throwing overboard slaves on board the Zong, in a sense. So I think that section here will, if you incorporate it into your lesson, will enable students to get a sense of the financial, the profit-driven kind of aspect here of the slave trade in a way. And you could broaden that out in terms of linking that into, because obviously the Zong was on its way to Jamaica, so you could link that perhaps with primary evidence looking at plantation life in Jamaica at that time. It's also the Zong is set here very much in the kind of what we generally call the revolutionary period, sort of before that, but in that sort of, in that era of burgeoning empires for Britain and France, and that kind of imperial competition as well, that is often driving the expansion of trade as well. So there's a lot here within that small section in the book that you could draw out and use in subsequent lessons as well, and put that into a sequence of lessons to really build a detailed picture of the transatlantic slave trade and how these, this huge region is interconnected through trade. What is driving that? What is financing it? How is it being financed? Why are people willing to do this, in a sense? And I think that will help to kind of stitch together this Atlantic world a little bit more for students as well. And as I said before, Schama presents this in a kind of very kind of vivid, stark way that I think will, be very good to engage students in what is happening here and why it's happening here. Again, with the insurance policy as well. So looking at those, the profit motive here of why people are willing to essentially carry out murder, in a sense. And it just leaves enough there to, as teachers, to then supplement that in subsequent lessons with linking it in with that profit motive as well. Also, that section there in 160, 161, it then goes into look at what is happening in London, for example, with Alano Equiano starting his kind of quest to challenge the slave trade, in a sense. It goes in to talk about his dealings and communication with Granville Sharp. So again, it's another way that you can kind of segue into looking at the sort of the incipient abolitionist movement that's going on at this time as well. So it's just a really useful section here in the book, and a small section of the book. The book is absolutely fantastic, incredibly engaging, as I said, in the whole kind of Atlantic world at this time, and looking at the central part and place that slavery and the slave trade itself played within the British Empire at this time. So I think it would really help students to kind of conceptualize the breadth of this trade as well, and how it reached into many different aspects of life for people around this Atlantic world. So just to recap before I finish for today is, as I said before, pages 157 to 161, focusing on the Zong. I think it's an incredibly famous case, and again, I think using this text here will really help students to conceptualize the financial imperatives that are driving this trade, and on an individual level, as we look at with Collingwood here, the captain in the decision-making process, but also drawing that out to the wider kind of financial backing that is driving the expansion of the slave trade at this time. So for me as a humble historian, this is an absolutely fantastic read, and Schama again showing why he is such a high caliber of historian, in my humble opinion. Not that he would care, but he is. It's a fantastic book, great read, and very interesting and very easy to use in the classroom as well. Thank you for listening.